Hi, this is Jeff Curto, and welcome to episode number 58 of Camera Position, a podcast about the creative side of photography. Well, I'd like to welcome you, and I'd mostly like to welcome all of the new folks out there. I have seen a huge increase in the number of listeners, and so I am delighted that you are here listening to Camera Position and getting something out of the content that's here. So thank you to those of you who are new subscribers. And if you are getting this podcast in some other way, somebody's sending it to you or some other way getting the podcast, please be aware that the podcasts are something that can be subscribed to. The easiest way to get this one is to go through the iTunes music store and search for Camera Position or my name, Jeff Curto, and you'll find it there. And you can subscribe, and it will automatically download new episodes when I make them, which, is not as often as I'd like. And I appreciate those of you who've let me know, you're happy to hear when there is a new one and you like them, but you appreciate the fact that I've got other things going on, and I do. But I am so happy to be here talking to you about photography. So in this episode of Camera Position, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about an interesting experience that I've had with an exhibition of the work, my work that I had at the University of La Verne in La Verne, California. And I thought it would be interesting to do a couple of things. First of all, several listeners to the podcast went out to the exhibition, took a look. A few of them even took some pictures, and we'll take a look at those and just sort of take a look at the logistics of mounting an exhibition that is sizable and that has to be shipped from my Chicago area home out to Southern California and back again. And also, another listener kind of asked a pretty interesting question that I thought was worth responding to. How did something like this come about? How does a photographer end up getting an exhibition at a gallery space like this? And I thought that would be interesting to tell that story, and also to see where it might land you as photographers, and where you might be able to take a look for exhibition spaces that might be useful to you. So I hope you'll indulge me here a little bit in sharing some comments that people made about the work, but I've got a point here in looking at how people respond to photographs and where they're going to best respond to photographs. Without any further ado, I thought I'd share some photographs here, several images made by several of the podcast listeners, and it's just so great that some of you guys went out there and did that. I'm really flattered that you took the time out of your busy lives and so forth. So Paul Viapiano, ciao, Paul, is a listener, and he lives in Southern California and went out to Miller Hall at the University of La Verne and made some photographs of the exhibition, which you're looking at here in the enhanced podcast, or I'll also post them on the cameraposition.com blog page. And a couple of things that Paul said, and I don't really want to spend a lot of time sort of, tooting the horn about the work, but I think it's worth kind of mentioning some responses that people had to the work, and worth that relative to what I'll talk about in a couple of minutes about this. Paul said, I spent about an hour looking at the prints. Real pleasure to see them in person in a nice quiet setting after seeing them in print and online. The tonality of your work is what impresses me the most. You get such an incredibly luminous quality in your images, and as I view them, they speak volumes to me about what your impression was when you originally made them. And, the idea of being able to see live photographs is really something important. And we'll get to that when we get to a question that another listener had asked about, how does an exhibition like this occur? But being able to see the work, and thank you very much for your kind comments, Paul, see the work live is really a big difference between seeing it, sort of on the web or in some sort of reproduction. So another listener who's also made some photographs here, Dale Dellinger, and thanks, Dale, for taking some photographs of the exhibition and the surrounding area. And Dale said, a striking example was number 2 in the exhibit, Perugia Umbria 1999, taken from a low angle under the lip of a fountain, and I'll put that on the blog page as well. When I first approached it, I thought the blurred water was texture on the building, and as I looked at it, the texture seemed to slowly come out of the stone facade until I realized it was water. I could also clearly see the keen way you use large depth of field and like the ceiling in Rocca di Radicofani, Toscana. Again, responses to the work based on actually seeing it live, actually being in front of it, and not looking at it in reproduction. And Dale went into just a remarkable amount of detail, and thanks so much, Dale, for sort of being my eyes for this exhibition that I really didn't get a chance to take a look at, or at least that I didn't get to see live. Of course, I saw the photographs before they left my studio, but the idea of being able to have something out there and such a long distance away and such a large number of images, and knowing what what the curator might have done to the work, which we'll talk about also here in a second. One last comment about being able to see photographs in any sort. Tony Donaldson here is talking about my work, but I think it's worth pointing out again. Jeff, they're wonderful. It's a big difference seeing them on the small screen and seeing a beautiful print, the composition, the subject matter, etc. So again, being able to see work live. And that brings me to this nice email from Cindy Whalen. Jeff, after listening to your podcast for many months now, I made the trip to SoCal to see your exhibit at the La Verne University. I'm not sure know what you know about the gallery, but it was interesting as interesting as your exhibit. The curator did a nice, simple job of displaying your photographs. She goes on to say, I think it would make a good podcast episode if you discussed how you came to exhibit in a small private college in Southern California. It's not your typical podcast theme, but I think it would be interesting. Thank you for your podcast and your photography. Keep up the good work. So thank you, Cindy. And I do think it's worth talking about this, because I know that a lot of folks out there who are listening to the podcast are interested in exhibiting their work, interested in having their work out in front of more people. And I thought it would be worth pointing out a few venues that are worth exploring. And there are several different ways in which you can get your work in front of people. Obviously, there are juried exhibitions or juried contests. Most of those these days seem to be done through submission of either CDs with images on them, or through posting of images onto a website, uploading images, paying your jurist's fee, and taking your chances. And I've had some luck with that, but not a great deal, and it would be interesting to hear from those of you out there to see what kind of good fortune or bad you've had with that. It's worth pointing out that when you do enter some sort of an exhibition like that, where there are lots of people entering, that you should be aware of who the jurist is. You should be aware of who that person is, and you should be aware of the kind of work that they do, or the kind of work that they like, if they're not a producer of photographs, but rather a somebody in another aspect of the world of photography, a curator or someone. What kind of work do they like, and does that work match up with what you do and what your interests are? Because if it doesn't, it may be a waste of time and money to put your work in front of that person who may not really like the sort of work that you do, or may not typically explore that kind of work. My best solution has been to actually put the work right in front of somebody's nose. And that has been a really useful thing to me in participating in portfolio review events. Portfolio review events where actually you are sitting down at a table for a predetermined amount of time, usually quite short, 15 or 20 minutes, with a portfolio reviewer. It could be somebody who has a gallery. It could be somebody who has a publication of some sort. Being able to sit down with somebody and discuss your work and essentially pitch the work to them, sell the work to them in a different way than you can through this more anonymous avenue of trying to get the work out there in a sort of cattle call environment. Obviously, it takes a bit of courage, I suppose, to get out there and sit down in front of somebody and say, here's my work, this is what I am, this is what I'm interested in, and this is what I'm producing. But the real benefit is that, first of all, they can see the actual images. And I have created for myself two different sizes of sample prints, both some very little ones on 8 by 10 inch sized paper, and also much larger ones on 16 by 20 inch sized paper that I can carry around with me. And depending on the venue that I'm going to, and how much time I might have with a reviewer, and how much importance I'm placing on that, I'll either take the large box or the small box. And so I have made a set of images, edited down to what it is that I'm most interested in showing people. And not only have I made that set of images, but I have very carefully made sure that these are prints that really look as good as they possibly can. No dented edges, no bent corners, no scratches on the surface of the images. And I treat them with care when I'm showing them to the reviewer, and I treat them with care when I'm putting them back in the box. So, and having a reasonably nice portfolio box, not a old crummy cardboard box that the paper came in when you were starting to make the prints, but an actual portfolio box that shows that you actually do care about the work and that you have something to say about it. Obviously, having some sort of a leave behind kind of promotional piece to allow people to have some sense of who you are and what you're doing is very important, as well as having the the sort of story about the work, and having a statement, maybe not a formal statement that you're going to read to someone, but something that you can say about the work that will make it make sense to you. I have frequently participated both as a reviewer and as a reviewed artist in portfolio reviews from the Society for Photographic Education, SPE. Now, I know I've talked about SPE on the podcast before, and I wanted to re-mention SPE because for many, many of you out there, especially those of you who aspire to exhibiting your work and being photographic artists, the Society for Photographic Education has a tremendous amount of benefit to you, even if you are not educators. And here's the story. The story, of course, is that, like me, my day job, college photography teacher, many photographic artists are also teachers. And of course, that's because, as many of us know, one of the best ways to make no money in photography is to be a fine artist. So many of us have daytime jobs that allow us to make our art during the time that we're not teaching. So the Society for Photographic Education is really made up of predominantly photographic artists. And while the organization does spend quite a bit of time talking about issues related to education in photography, there's also quite a bit of content about the art of photography. And especially for those of you who have not come up through an art training background, this can be a very useful venue for you to learn about photography, to learn about what photography is and how photography works. So I would urge you to go to the website for the Society for Photographic Education, which is www.spenational.org, spenational.org, and I'll put that on the blog page. And there are both regional conferences that occur in the various regions of the United States, Midwest, Southeast, East, etc., as well as a national conference this year that will be happening in Denver in March of 2008. That's always in the spring, and it moves around the country. But and the regional conferences move around as well, but they are very much worth attending as a photographic and somebody interested in photographic education, photographic ideas, concepts, and of course working on learning about the process of exhibiting your work. So I actually showed my body of work last spring at the National Society for Photographic Education conference, and I showed the work to a guy named Gary S. Colby, and Gary is the curatorial person in charge of the gallery, the Irene Carlson Gallery, that my work is just coming down from this past weekend. It's been up there for about 6 weeks. And Gary liked the work almost immediately. And what was interesting is that Gary had an idea about a group exhibition that he wanted to put on with some other photographers whose work he'd seen. And that work, that project that he had come up with an idea for, somehow did not come to fruition. But two of the artists who he was interested in showing, me and another photographer named Jane Schreiben, the two of us ended up having exhibitions at the Irene Carlson Gallery at the University of La Verne. Now, again, this came about because Gary S. Colby saw the work, was interested in the work enough to be able to be interested in showing it. But really, I think that the key for me was to be able to show him the work live and spend just a few minutes talking to him about what my project for this last, 15, 18 years, what this project has entailed, what my ideas are, what I think the work is about. So I presented the large box of pictures, and I just a few weeks later, after showing him the work, had a commitment for an exhibition, this exhibition that I just had. So that is how that exhibition came about. And it's also worth pointing out that what I sent out to the University of La Verne was about 8 or 9 more photographs than eventually got shown in the exhibition. And that's also worth pointing out that the curator in an exhibition has a great deal to do with how an exhibition is put together. Not only the sequence of images, unless you specifically specify a sequence, and you've discussed that with them before, the sequence of the images is generally up to the curatorial person who is hanging the show. The show, in this case, I needed to provide matted prints, and fortunately not framed, so I did not have to ship the framed work out to sunny Southern California. But I did have to ship a very large box with a huge number of images in it. About 35 images went out, and I believe about 27 or so images were shown. So, and that was a request of Gary Colby. He wanted to have more work than he was able to hang, so that he had some choices to make out of the body of work. So remember that the curator is your friend. He is somebody who is trying to help you show the work to the best possible advantage by helping you edit a little bit. And so that's worth sort of pointing out what it is that that the curator is doing. So I had to get the work there at a particular time, obviously, and that now I am expecting the work to come back. It's also worth mentioning that this is something that you're going to need to establish a budget for, because it is not an inexpensive proposition to cut mats for that large number of images and to prepare that large number of images, and to have that large number of images all looking just the way you want them, and just the right sort of sense of how you want them to be presented. So portfolio reviews are incredibly useful. These larger juried kinds of shows that are out there where hundreds of photographers are submitting can be useful, though trying to get through to the jurist, and I've juried a number of shows that are maybe not hundreds and hundreds of pictures, but certainly a small number of hundreds of images. And it is a difficult proposition to make sure that everybody's photographs get their fair shake, and everybody is understanding what it is that they're doing with those images, and how they're presenting them, and what their ideas are, and so forth. So another useful venue that I know a number of you, because you've written to me about it, have used is local facilities, local places. Libraries are specifically quite good. Local libraries, local coffee shops. They may not be places where you'll sell a lot of work, but they will certainly be places where you'll get your work out in front of people. And the other advantage of having your work in a library or a coffee shop is that you can kind of watch how people watch the work. It's local to you. You can kind of sit down and have a cup of coffee in the coffee shop and overhear people if they talk about it, or at least kind of take a look at which pictures people may spend a bit more time or a bit less time looking at. And that may help you to kind of determine what a general interest level is for the work. So first of all, I'd like to really thank those of you who went out to the University of La Verne. And if you did get a chance to go and you didn't let me know that you were there, I'd really love to hear from you. And regardless of what you thought, I'd be really interested in knowing that you were out there. And I'm especially interested in being able to tell Gary Colby that through the podcast here, I was able to communicate to a number of people that they should go visit the University of La Verne and its beautiful, apparently very beautiful environs. So thanks again for those of you who went out and took a look. I'm recording this podcast early on Wednesday morning, the 17th of October. And tomorrow, Thursday, the 18th of October, I'll be presenting doing a presentation on podcasting and other media type things at the Photo Plus Expo conference convention in New York City. So I'm very excited about presenting. If any of you happen to both hear this podcast, maybe on your plane ride out to New York City, and happen to be at Photo Plus Expo, stop by 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Thursday the 18th, and say hello. I'd be really interested in meeting any listeners who are out at Photo Plus Expo. And if you don't happen to see me, drop me an email, jeff@jeffcurto.com, and I will respond to you, and maybe we could have a cup of coffee and just say hello, because I'm always interested in knowing who's out there and who's listening. So thank you again. Thank you very much to those of you who went out and looked at the show, and thank you very much to those of you who are listening to Camera Position, a podcast about the creative side of photography. Camera Position is a proud member of the Photocast Network, your photo resource in the potosphere. photocastnetwork.com